Yo, what's up guys? I did already record this part of the video, but I found out something new. Well, a few people have told me already that apparently this dude has perfect AI from going S2 to S3 always. And that's kind of weird because sure, the S2 is kind of maybe like a Sierra S2 and therefore always uses it when it's available. But there's no reason for this S3 to be a perfect AI. And perfect AI normally comes from having any kind of condition based on that condition meeting a threshold, and because of meeting that threshold, you always start using the right skill. As in the case of Julie, I think that's the most common case. The moment that you're full HP, you do something extra. So therefore, you will always do this skill because you can do that extra thing. And actually, her whole family, all of them actually do have that. We also do have for Zerath, the moment that there's enough HP to drain, then you start using that. But for him, there's no reason for him to always use this skill. But I did do a few tests on it, and he always seems to be using S2 and S3 in that rotation. Well, to talk about the skills while we test this a few more times, we have skill 1 that is a multi-hit of 2 hits, could be all the way to 5. He's not going to fire that multiple times in a row, but it's just going to be one animation of 5 shots coming straight in. It's a decent skill, but it's definitely not that great. Skill 2 is the attack buff and the speed buff and an additional turn. And then on skill 3 we have, as you can see over here, we have double hit with chances to stun, chances to push back, and then also dealing damage by both speed and attack. So we are a speed scaler on this unit while also providing himself with attack buff and speed buff. Now the big question is, if it's perfect AI, is this going to be the free-to-play Zerath? Well, that's what I thought right away as well. So can we bring this towards Giants? So how would that look like in Giants? Well, this is a pre-recorded run. We go for an S2 into an S3 and we instantly clear the wave, which is really nice. You might say, what the hell is the team next? We'll talk about that in a second. So in this case, we do use all of the units around it to clear it. Then we go for an S2 into an S3. But you probably already have noticed it. He also starts using the S2 at the moment of the mid-boss and the final boss, which is wasting a little bit of time. If you don't have him max skilled on the S2, then it could be a thing. So you might say, it's like, that's a new best in slot team, right? That is like a crazy good team. Well, actually the time, you can't see it because it's just out of screen, is a 25 seconds, which is definitely not that great if you keep in mind that the Frodo team of yesterday was doing about 19 to 20 seconds. Plus, there's one really big problem with this team. And let me show you that problem. Let me show you the rune quality that you need to run this shit. So this is my Teshar on triple fight with decent attack and decent crit damage. Then we need this kind of set on the Legolas. I do need the crit rate from the Teshar, otherwise I cannot kill it. I cannot just do it with an attack lead of a Liam. Then this is the Perlia that we're looking at, also triple fight. And then this is the Luna that we're looking at, also triple fight. And then this is the Liam that we're looking at, also triple fight. So this is definitely one of those units. We need a few things to happen for this to actually be a viable team. A, we would need the S2 not to be maxed and therefore he doesn't spam it in mid-boss and final boss. B, we probably do need 8% damage up on his S3 or a little bit more than that to actually get to a point where we can just use Liam. We don't have to use Teshar, and then we can throw a homunculus in the third team without adding too many, without having to add 12 fight sets to actually get this team to run. Because if we were to have a team of simply you into you into you into no one else, then it would be really nice. But if we want to do that, we would need crazy good runes on the Luna, and it has to be rage. And Liam has to move only at the final boss and not at the mid-boss. So those are two things that I currently cannot make at all because you need way, way better runes for that to make that work. Or we just simply need a buff on him to do extra damage on that skill 3. Because you need a lot and a lot of damage. Because you're just simply fighting the passive of the golems where the damage reduction is that much, that a single hit would do so much more damage, and therefore Zerath is a lot easier to clear than the thing that I just showed right now. However, he might not be for PvE just yet, might be there with a buff, but I think he's also really good for siege offense and arena offense. Don't think it's that much of an RTA unit because he's a little bit squishy by the base stats, but let's check him out in siege and arena offense. If you have been watching my channel, you are probably very familiar with this team that I'm using a lot. I actually want to test Grogan versus Legolas in this case. So I'm going to be testing out how much damage does this Grogan do versus how much damage does a Legolas do. And just to have like an equal reference, I'm going to be testing that on my own team just because then I can hit twice exact same way. So first of all, I'm going to be also putting the Grogan runes, which is my best in slot for, or all of my best runes that I normally use for Arena Rush, on this Grogan, and then just see how that works. So let's see, Tion Lang doesn't do too much. Skill 3, how much do? We do about 32k, which is good damage. and then we go into another, like, I think that is a good, like, 15-ish K or something. So 32 plus 15, of course, we have the anti-death mechanic in there, then we take the extra turn, and we do not care about any elements. But let's see how much a Legolas would do on a exact same set. Also with Legolas, we could go for the option, if we already do outspeed things, to go for a 38 attack lead. But then again, speed lead, he is also speed scaling. So that's the kind of part that makes him a little bit awkward, and his speed lead on him would be really, really nice. Then for the runes, as mentioned, we're going to be taking all of the Grogan runes, which are looking a little bit like this. It might be that he's a little bit too high attack focus, a little bit too low crit damage focus, because in the case of a Grogan, you do actually want to go higher on attack, lower on the crit damage, because you get crit damage from your skill itself. He doesn't have that, but I did a little bit of optimization on swap, and in the end, this is still very close to a best set that I can do. However, for artifacts, there are a few things that are actually good. Crit damage skill 3. Additional damage by speed. It's definitely not that bad. But also just speed increasing effect and attack increasing effect. So I think I will go for the speed increasing effect and attack increasing effect with a little bit of crit damage 3. If you have a line that has all 4 of those, then that's definitely the best line that you can go for. But let's see what I have that makes a bit of sense. If you had accuracy 3 on this, that would actually have made a lot of sense over here as well. Let's see if I have a combination with maybe also this plus that. No, then it's like, it's every time kind of missing one thing. Like also the crit damage more doesn't work. Crit damage first only works on the first hit, not on the second hit of it. Crit damage less is not that interesting. So I don't really have a really good combination line that makes a lot of sense on this character. But if you do have something like that, then it would be absolutely insane. So these are the kind of stats that we're going to be working with. We keep in mind we went for a 32k into a triple 5k-ish. Well, the first hit was a little bit lower because things weren't stunned yet, and then the later hits were something along those lines. So you do have the issue with fire. So we do fight a fire unit. You do have to keep in mind that the animation is a little bit slower because you have to go for an S2 into an S3. It's not a long animation, but it is still an animation nevertheless. How much damage are we dealing? We're dealing 26k into 25k. We're dealing a little bit less over here because this thing is actually minus on the wind, and this thing, I think we do have extra light damage on there or something. I have no clue. It just has way less defense. That could also be a thing. Keep in mind, the enemy that I'm fighting right now is my own team, and that's a crazy tanky team out there. So that's definitely one of those things hard to hit. We still hit 24Ks if we do crit, and I think that's like a 5K if we don't crit over there. But in the end, I think we can take the average of about like 50-ish K, where the Grogan was doing 35K, and then the second hit was doing a good bit as well. And keep in mind, there's a Grogan. Grogan is really strong as well. So that is a good bit of damage. So let's actually see where we can use that in arena offense and also siege offense, and also if you don't have enough. Especially if this thing were to get a speed lead. If this thing gets a speed lead, I think he is our best in slot for arena offense, because then you can use any kind of death breaker that has like a multi-hit death breaker. There's so many units out there right now, from like the Dark Tanjiro to like all of these kind of things where you don't really have to use speed contest. And you could just simply go for this, and then this could be any death break, and it would work if this thing does actually get its speed lead. And you can outspeed a whole bunch of things with that. I really do hope he gets a speed lead, because that would open up a lot of arena offense options to be super strong without having to have an LD5. But for now, a Nephthys is definitely kind of best in slot, but there's a lot of guaranteed death breakers. You could even go for a guaranteed death break in the sense of this thing out here, where if you have enough attack and if you have enough defense, you will guarantee get that death break in, those kind of things. There's a lot of good AoE death breakers right now, but the only good AoE death breaker with a speed lead is a Nephthys. But if you remove the speed lead need by this thing already having a speed lead, then that part would be really nice as well. So let's actually fight a few defenses with this, and let's see how far we get. So in the case of this, I do already see two things where a resetter or a Grogan with anti-revive would be a little bit better, because that is that thing over there. Can I actually outspeed a Camilla on the 24 lead versus a Camilla on the 33 lead? Apparently not. Is he fully in tune? He is fully in tune. That's where you die. Expecting a little bit too much out of that one. However, this is definitely outspeedable. The only issue is that this thing, it could mess up you. Thing is, which is nice, is that he will go for a... Well, he has to go for this pair stun to actually do anything. But let's see if that works out, because in this case, it could definitely mess me up. I don't think it is the right way with the Tiana. If you do have some buffs in there, then this thing most of the time doesn't really do too much. But yeah, if he gets the right stun in from a despair, then it actually does do enough. Great way to start showcasing something. Let's actually hit this one. Double fire. Maybe it's an issue as well. But we shall see. Double fire. How much can we do against a double fire shenanigans? Also, this thing is probably high on the resistance, so opting for the stun on that might be a little bit hard. Do get all of the lands in, of course. How much damage are we dealing? That's a good bit of damage, and in this case, the Nefties helps out a lot by having something silenced. I think that we had a minus water on some of the units over there because I didn't do as much damage, but it was still good enough damage to clear everything. Let's move on to the next. This one over here could be some minus stats as well, but let's see how much we are able to do. These are definitely all kinds of teams that you do still need your speed lead plus this out there. Best option to replace the Nefties in the current team out there would still simply be to go for a Gemini, because a Gemini after a Tiana did already strip, Gemini has pretty good odds of landing the Death Break. And damage out there, wow, we're doing 38k's double hit on squishy targets. That is, wow, that's a lot of damage right there. So I would say he has the damage potential, absolutely. It's just the big issue that he kind of has is fighting against fires and not having the speed lead. But then again, it's also the case, if he gets the 28 lead is better than the Nefties lead. So if I were to get, or if this thing were to be buffed into a 28 lead, then he would absolutely be even better than the current team I'm using. Okay, against high tanky targets, he's not doing as much damage. It's definitely the damage difference seen in that. And in this case, it's also kind of the unfair factor where Nefties does provide the, what's it called? It does provide the silence, and because of the silence, you will be able to do more as well. I think there was a 5 multi-hit on that S1. That's also one of those things. His S1 for cleanup is actually really strong. Like, if you have to, let's actually try to fight like a Camilla, and let's see him clean up a Camilla, because I think his S1 is pretty solid cleanup for Camillas. Okay, we have a Camilla over here, but the Alexandra would kind of mess me up. Couldn't find a single Camilla, so I just put the Camilla of my own team out there. It is tanky enough to actually give it a pack of a punch right there. And let's see, if it is a slower team, I could go for the 38 attack lead, and this could be, then again, any Death Breaker out there. So just kind of seeing like, okay, how would that look like if you don't use a Nefties in this kind of shape or way, but you use any Death Breaker and you use him as the attack lead, which 38 attack lead is still really strong for a self-nuking kind of target. So let's see how much damage are we dealing with this right now. So it is a little bit more damage on the attack lead than it is on the speed lead. So that is an interesting thing as well. We will have you potentially going for Legolas. Did not go for the Legolas. Did go for the Legolas. That's too bad, because then we lose the speed buff. Well, speed buff is actually not that big of a lose, because his S1 is not speed scaling. But if we do get a lot of hits, that thing hurts. Can you, maybe, why are you hitting that one? Stop hitting that one. That's unnecessary. Is dead. Okay, I wanted to have a fight where he can clean up. Fighting fire units is definitely difficult on this one, I guess. Unless he just double crits it. Or he gets like a buff for not being able to glance. Might be a little bit strong on him. But we also have the potential of using him in Siege, because normally I tend to use a Changpong next to a Tiana kind of style. I could also use him because he does have a chance for stun, and he does have a chance for pushbacks, and he does have a chance for not landing freaking ever on... Okay, well, now we kill it. Let's see how fast we can clean up a Camilla with this, with just the S1 shots. Okay, it's not doing as much damage as I was hoping on the S1. He does have a fast rotation of his S2 to get back into his skill 3. But I was expecting a little bit more damage to be able to clean off this Camilla. But big issue is he's not speed scaling on his S1. And that just makes him a little bit less damage output with the speed buff and attack buff. So now we have a good hit coming in on a Death Break. But we only get a 2 times hit. He's definitely the fair bit of RNG on that. Also, you can see that this Camilla was like plus 41k HP, which is not the most common of Camillas out there. Camilla is almost healing more than I deal damage for. Yeah, so clearing the Camilla still definitely not that. So clearing the Camillas in the end, still not that easy, but he does an okay job by it. Of course, we can also use him in a team like this in Siege. Of course, if you don't have this one, then you go for either like a Truffle, you go for like a Dark Tanjiro or anything of those kind of things. Dark Tanjiro does make it where you put the Irresistible, and therefore you will guaranteed land his double pushback, which might be pretty interesting. I will try that after this hit. So first of all, I want to be trying out throwing my LDs at it. I think it's more of a Maximilian play than a Nefties play in all sense, but let's just see how far this will do. Whoops, I'm not used to having to go S2, S3 on this thing just yet. But even then, that's already pretty solid damage, not gonna lie. Like, even this already is pretty much clean up style from here. Wow. I think I might like it more for Siege than I like it for Arena offense. Well, that's a solid hit and a half right there. Because also in Siege, it's more very specific what you want to hit because you re-rune for the exact target that you're hitting. Rather than in Arena Rush, you kind of want to be more global. You want to be more light and dark because light and dark kills every element out there kind of style. So we do miss on the middle right now. We do get an additional turn and then you already nearly clear half of the battlefield. But let's see on an attack buff, how much damage are we dealing then? 25k, even 34k over there. That's some good damage right there. Plus we have stunts and pushback. So that's a solid hit right there. Let's actually do the fair assessment for the people that don't have LD5s. And let's put in a Tanjiro Dark. I think Tanjiro Dark would probably be the best one out there for him. In this case, I'm just going to be lazy and take the whole Maximilian set. I don't think they have that much accuracy. Normally, I would know what actually... Let's give him a fair set where we would say it's like, yo, you are triple fight. Because in the end, that is what I would normally use if I were to actually use him in this kind of scenario. I would actually put him on triple fight, and then you probably also want to go some additional damage artifacts, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. In this case, we just simply go for this. We do have a crit rate lead, so you could lower his crit by a bit. This lead does not work over there, but just for the idea, I'm just going to use this. It's either this or you go for Truffle, which is also the Madeline Cookie. Is the Madeline Cookie? I think it's Madeline Cookie. But I think I kind of like this one a little bit more for the simple fact of the Irresistible. Because now the Irresistible makes it where my stunts and my pushbacks guaranteed land. And with the stunts and pushbacks guaranteed land, I think Tiana will take a next turn. At least if Tiana is in the next stick, I think it should be. So that's dead. Wow. That's also one way. That's a lot of damage. That's, wow. I think that this team is definitely very useful, especially if you go 21 crit less on this unit right there. That's a lot of stats right there. So for the people that do want to look at the stats, I gave my absolute best set to this Legolas. It is an attack crit damage attack kind of style. You can definitely go for speed on the slot 2. I kind of noticed that rather going speed on the slot 2 or attack on the slot 2, it kind of adds up to the same damage. So you could definitely go for more speed on this to make it easier to guarantee your outspeed. And then you just go for your Tiana to outspeed these kind of things. And then you Tanjiro fast enough on like a triple fight set or anything that you can make it. Artifact-wise, crit damage is 3, speed increasing effect, damage on X element, all of those kind of things are pretty good. But I would say in general sense, this damage is looking good. So if you're fighting any kind of Lamilla teams, this might be pretty good. Only issue you have, if they put any fire units to it, I'm not 100% sure if you actually do want to be using this if they put too much fire unit. Like, if you're already fighting a fire Bayek, it might be already one of those things like, do you really want to hit the fire Bayek with this? But yeah, damage is kind of hard to read, but it's about like 30-ish Ks on this, which is definitely really, really good and strong damage. So definitely a unit that, if you do have it, I would recommend to build it. And I definitely do think I will be using it more in Siege. But let's fight a Bayek and let's see how that actually looks. So we do have a Bayek team over here. I think I fully outspeed this whole thing. It also does have a double life on the one in the middle, which is maybe not really the most recommended thing out there. In that case, you probably want to go for a Death Break plus Reset, which you have in the Jasmine, which is the T-Bunny on light. Then that would be a lot more interesting. But in this case, we still do 30k if we do crit, which is a pretty nasty hit. But we also have the pushback on you. And because having the pushback on you, we do get our second turn in as well, which makes it really nice that you do get that second turn in. But from here, especially if it would to start proccing, it could be pretty bad right there. And that's also not that much damage. Very mediocre damage. And now we are in issue territory. At least it focuses the Tiana. But I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to clean things up from here. Cooldowns are definitely not that long, so you do get your S3 back pretty fast. We do have a death one on that one, and we are hopefully landing this right now. Did not land it this time around. Yikes. I think we're gonna die to the Bayek. So yeah, hitting fire units with this would not really recommend that. That's kind of where you cross the line of being like, yeah, probably not. The break, yep, did actually crit 2 on there. S1, I'm not really a big fan of the S1 because of 50% check, like getting all the way 5 hits super strong, getting just 2 hits kind of weak. But it is definitely a nice unit, so let me know in the comments where you would use this. Also, let me know in the comments which of the collab units you think is the strongest and you would like me to make another showcase video on. And see you as always in the next one. Thanks for watching. If you would like to see more guides, join the Discord and check out the content tab for the guide video archive, which contains all of the guides that you might need. Hope to see you there.